Welcome, welcome everyone again. Here is Claudia from Nourished by Claudia, nutrition and dietetic clinician, with my friend, partner in crime and clinical psychotherapist, Jacqueline and I. And today we're gonna be here to discuss the self-care tools and complementary therapies in recovery. Jacqueline, too much of a mouthful for me.
Tongue twister.
Tongue twister. So I'm very excited to have Jacqueline on board in this conversation, simply because she is an expert, especially when it comes to essential oils, and she has been using them a lot in her busy clinical practice. So first of all, welcome, Jacqueline. How are you today?
Hello. I am very well, Claudia. I'm overjoyed as always to get to be here, but especially today, we dive into one of my favorite things to talk about that I actually don't get to talk about all the time. So I'm very excited to have this conversation.
I'm actually very interested and curious about this conversation because, as I shared with you just a couple of minutes ago, essential oils is not really my area of expertise, and I'm always looking to learn something new. So can we just deep
dive in?
Yeah, and let me know, can you tell me, Jacqueline, how would you use essential oils in a clinical practice, or especially when women are trying to get their period back?
Yeah. What I love about bringing essential oils into my world and the work that I do is that there are more clinically psychological concepts and methodologies that are important, of course, in eating disorder recovery for someone going through the situation of HA recovery. But we don't have to target everything in that really heavy duty way. So it's not, this conversation isn't about using essential oils instead of having other forms of treatment, but ways that we can support it that might be gentler, sometimes more inspiring. What I love about essential oils is they really help people work creatively in listening to their own intuition. It can be a way of using plant medicine from your own direction, from your sense of, simply just running a bath and then having the thought occur to you that I want to add a few drops of lemon to this bath. That would be refreshing to me. Or I'm just feeling really run down the afternoon. I'm going to pop some drops of peppermint oil in the palms of my hands, rub them together and inhale deeply. And that's not something that anyone else has told you to do. It's the beginnings of building an intuitive relationship and connection with your body. Because if you can do that with aroma and you can do that with oils, eventually you'll be able to do that with food. And your body will be able to tell you, I feel like eating this, I've had enough of that. I need more variety. I need something, foods from a different season. It will start to speak to you in the same way that this pathway builds. So I love that it really welcomes women into autonomy and agency in their recovery. And because you can't really go wrong when it comes to essential oils in terms of it's not going to be the wrong aroma that you've chosen to add to your bath. There are some safety considerations which we can touch on, but it really invites you into that space of creating your own self-care and listening to yourself and experimenting, which I think is absolutely fundamentally a part of real recovery. It is a very creative, self-coordinated space.
I respect what you said in the beginning when you mentioned that essential oils do not replace therapy, do not replace nutrition, do not replace self-care in general, but it's another tool that can be added and can help a person in many different ways. I want to know more about it. And my question is, how would you know which kind of oil to give to a specific person in specific situation? How can someone get started with this?
So a clinical aromatherapist, which I'm not at this stage at study, I'd be very interested in doing at some stage, would walk you through the nuance of what the particular herbs can offer the body's system and how that can be helpful for igniting, say, relaxation responses or be invigorating or be stimulating. It's something from my own study and interest I have collated some knowledge on that I'd be happy to share if our listeners would find that useful. But I also am really big on, as we use oils, the part that comes in more from my therapeutic background is using them intentionally and using them as a way of discerning meaning for yourself. So when I mentioned earlier, just the gesture of adding lemon oil to a hot bath is you noticing something about yourself, which is building mind-body connection, attending to that need, which is building trust back in yourself, both of these things which are usually very disturbed with the experience of HA and an eating disorder or an eating disorder. But using something like, I've got a really special blend here to share with you today called Adaptive, and this is a particular evidence-based blend that's used for anxiety and depression. So it has been shown to reduce the symptoms of both anxiety and depression. And if I woke up and noticed, noticed that my mood was a little bit lower, or I felt too much anxiety in my system, I felt my pace was going more quickly than was going to support me, and I made the choice to apply this to myself, to anoint myself, to maybe put some drops inside my handbag so it was there when I opened it up when I arrived at work, to put some on my pillow so I received that as I put myself back to bed that evening. I am making a choice to live with a particular intention of regulating my nervous system that day. And that's a very different entry point into the day or into the moment than if we're just kind of gritting our teeth and hoping for the best, or telling ourselves to calm down and not be so anxious. It's a way of giving yourself a resource that you otherwise wouldn't have access to. While there is, from an aromatherapist perspective, there are oils that we know from herbal medicine are absolutely in line with treating particular ailments, even medical ailments. There's a huge amount of research to support that. And I am really passionate about that space as well. Things like clary sage can ignite, are associated with increasing contraction in the beginning of birth, and they can be helpful amongst all of the other recommended treatments for trying to get your period back, for example. But as you begin a practice of self-care with essential oils, you tend to imprint meaning with oils for yourself as well. So for me, one oil I really love, especially at this time of year, is cinnamon bark oil, which is just so warming and fiery and divine and makes me feel so loved and supported. And like, it's like a really firm hug. I love cinnamon bark oil. And I know that if I'm using that on myself and I can feel that on my body, on my skin, I can smell it in my clothes. I actually love to put it in my beanies and scarves this time of year because it lasts for a really long time. So if you've done that a few days prior, you'll still be able to smell it when you put the scarf on a few days later. And it reminds me of that thought I had towards myself even earlier in the week, that I'm re-receiving, and then through that re-remembering my intention at a different time. That was like, it's like a lovely surprise, like a little love note that I've left myself from earlier. And for me, there's particular meaning of cinnamon bark. I used to use that a lot when I was feeling through a particularly tricky time, and it made me feel really supported. It's when I was first introduced to the oil. So even now, like probably 15 years after that original time, I smell this, and it doesn't take me back to the pain. It takes me back to that first inclination of, I can actually be there for myself. This is actually my relationship with me that is going to make a difference in my life. It's actually me that's thought of me and me that supported me. And cinnamon bark oil will take me back there every time. So I like to integrate the both. They're beautiful books you can read that will tell you what herbs to use for which applications, but then you can also develop that like a dictionary of your own essential oil applications for yourself.
When you mentioned a cinnamon bark, it reminded me of Christmas, and yes. I just felt this hug from the inside. I can see also how essential oils can work very well in conjunction with affirmations and manifestation, because they seem like an affirmation done without using words, basically, or without using our brain, but something that you can simply apply to your clothing or apply on your skin and just bring with you for the rest of the day. And I love that something that you used 15 years ago during a challenging time is actually helping you today to remind yourself of how far you've come and how you can actually endure tough time in your life and how you can become victorious at the end of it. Because there are so many pregnant women or wanting to be pregnant women in this channel, there is something that I would like to clarify from the very beginning. Do you think that essential oils are safe in preconception, pregnancy, and also with the kids? Because also, can you tell us more about how to discern which essential oils are safe or not? Because if you go to the $2 shops, you're exposed to a huge variety of essential oils. So how can we understand which one to pick, and are they safe, basically?
Thank you so much for asking that, Claudia. That's a really important question. In terms of choosing essential oils, there is a huge diversity in quality, and I will only use on myself food grade quality oils because they are absorbed through the skin. That means they go straight into the bloodstream. That means they become part of our body. And just like synthetic fragrances or other things that we apply to our skin, it becomes part of our system. They can be hormone disruptors, and that's working against the intention of HA recovery. It's definitely not what people in this community need. There are some really high quality brands, and one way of telling, one really easy way, is if you have an essential oil that you've put on your shelf and you've used it a few times, you've taken the lid off, you've used it, you've put the lid back on. If there's any residue, it's usually an indicator that the oil isn't a high quality. So with the doTERRA oils that I use, the only excess oil, it just comes off like water. There's no residue, there's no buildup. When you get those, like the first oils I used to use when I was a child and saving up my pocket money and buying oil from the local pharmacy, they would get like this oily coating, almost like old glue, and then it would get this fluff like lint stick to it. So in hindsight, I know what I was using wasn't of high quality, but Young Living do beautiful quality oils. Pure Essential Oils, a New Zealand brand that does beautiful quality oils, and the doTERRA brand does beautiful oils. It often is indicated in the price range as well. So if you're getting an oil, even if it says on the label that it's pure, but it's under $20, it probably isn't. It probably isn't, and it's not regulated in Australia. So that's worth keeping in mind as well. But I'd be so happy for anyone listening today is reach out to me. It doesn't have to be a doTERRA oil, but I will tell you what I know about the quality of that oil to make sure that you are keeping safe. In terms of preconception,
Sorry, I would like to pause you for a second. And just because we are on this topic of conversation, it's very much the same with supplements. Here in Australia, they must be TGA approved, otherwise I wouldn't put them inside my body. And for example, for someone that goes to a chemist shop and they find an omega-3, which is less than $20, I beg you, you and all the women and people that are listening, not to get that, because it's more harmful than anything else. And sorry if I interrupted you, but I just wanted to underline that, because sometimes we say we're using the supplements, we have the essential oils, we're doing all the things, but the reality is that we put our liver and our system under so much pressure because we are using toxic products that are not making any difference and are not gonna move the needle towards our end goal. And now you were talking about preconception, which I'm sure that everyone is like putting the ears up.
This is the subject. This is what we want to know. It's worth saying with essential oils in general, if you're not dousing yourself with it and if you're not ingesting it orally, the transfer percentage is always going to be extremely mild. So objectively, even with the oils that are contraindicated, the risk is actually incredibly low because it's such a small amount that would cross through to your system. In preconception, the risk is almost nil. There's clarisage I mentioned can increase contraction or your period coming back. So if you suspected that you might be in the very early stages of pregnancy, that might be one to avoid. But otherwise, anything that's that you're exposed to, there's no detectable level of risk. Once you are pregnant, if pregnancy has been confirmed, I would just recommend to check with your healthcare practitioner. You would be someone like check with Claudia. Claudia would be a very good person to check with. Check with your naturopath if you have one, or GP. Their guidance might be very cautious, and maybe it's just worth being cautious through that period of time. But again, I used essential oils through my whole pregnancy. I just avoided any oils that were indicated with onset of contraction or stimulating labor for obvious reasons. And when I did start to birth, it was a very essential oil affair. I used a lot to support my birthing experience, which was really helpful. So do just check with a healthcare professional, but the main one is clary sage to avoid.
Thank you for clarifying that. I normally, obviously, my advice is change from woman to woman, but I normally say during the first trimester, just don't risk it, because it's not a risk worth taking, but not because of the essential oil, but simply because most women, they have low quality essential oils. And so it's so great that we are having these conversations today, because you are clearly explaining the difference between buy low quality essential oils that can be harmful against something like doTERRA, which is the one that you have been using during your pregnancy and birth, which are really high quality. And personally speaking, I use them as well during my birthing process, and it was amazing at the time. I haven't been able to smell them again.
Really?
After giving birth, simply because it was in a hospital setting, and funny stories that it reminded me of the hospital setting more than the actual moment of giving birth. But then I have welcomed different type of essential oils just for energy, pain management, happiness, anxiety, and so on and so forth, and now I need your expert advice on it, because plenty of the women that we work with, they do suffer from anxiety and depression, and you have already touched upon that. But I really would like to know more about essential oils when it comes to digestive issues, lack of hunger, or even pain, because lots of women without a period and with eating disorders, they suffer from aches and pains due to different reasons, let's say. So what would you use in that specific occasions?
Love those questions. With digestion, I personally have a history of complicated digestive issues. I sympathize enormously, and Digestion is a blend that's been made by doTERRA that honestly changed my life. All of the doTERRA blends are food grade. So if it's a herb or a leaf that's appropriate for ingestion, so some aren't appropriate no matter what the quality is. And again, please just reach out to me or Claudia to confirm if you're unsure. But things like lemon, grapefruit, any of the botanical blends, and a lot of the herbs like coriander and basil, peppermint, spearmint, are all appropriate to ingest. And you can actually just add, I usually always have a drop of something just in my big water bottle, which just makes it so much more delightful to enjoy water through the day. Just add a bit of a spin on it depending what I'm feeling like. With Digestion, it's got aniseed and licorice root in it, as well as fennel and peppermint. So they're usually the herbs that you would see in like a digestive tea or like a stomach oil that might be manufactured specifically for easing digestive issues. But taking it orally just means that it goes right to the source. And I've had the experience of feeling like having quite an upset stomach and just having a drop under my tongue or in some water, and it's hugely relieving. But if you'd rather not ingest it, or just as an alternative, you can mix your own tummy rub with some high quality almond oil, jojoba oil, add a few drops of the Digestion or any of those oils like fennel, peppermint. I also often use spearmint, aniseed. I often also use clove and cinnamon. Cinnamon cures everything in my world, and rubbing it onto my belly is deeply soothing. Even, funnily enough, on the soles of your feet, because of the way that our meridians are connected and the way that that also then has access into your bloodstream. That can be quite lovely even before bed. If you've got a sore tummy going to bed, rubbing it on the soles of your feet and base of spine can give you that relief. In terms of muscle recovery and general aches and pains, anything with menthol is really lovely because it gives you that tingle. In Australia, we use deep heat creams a lot, which just give that sort of hot tingly sensation. Physiotherapists often use it when you go and see them. It's that kind of feeling, but we can get that directly through oils like the On Guard blend. The cinnamon has a lot of heat in it. Clove has a more subtle heat in it. Copaiba oil is a really beautiful blend for doing that as well. And the gold standard one is Ice Blue blend from doTERRA and blue tansy as well, which is a beautiful little flower that's extract is elicits a heat response that increases blood flow. So placing that on your muscles, either as a rub or directly onto your skin, can be really easeful. Adding some to a hot bath would be beautiful as well. Or something I like to do, if you prefer to have a shower, is even throw some oil on the floor of the shower, like on the tiles, turn on the hot water and it evaporates up. Yeah, it's really cool. And throw some on your towel. So when you come out the shower, you're wrapping yourself in that same aroma that you've cleansed yourself with. And it goes through your sinuses then, it's inhaled, and again, is then in your system, in your bloodstream, starting to have effect.
Some of the oil that you shared with us before in terms of soothing your digestive system are very similar to the supplements that I use in clinical practice. For example, spearmint tea, it's very common with women suffering from PCOS and restoring the hormonal balance. Peppermint and licorice, that's definitely my go-to tea whenever my gut is disturbed and whenever something happens. So I can really resonate with those type of oils. I had no idea about the oils that you can use to manage the pain, especially the muscles pain and joint pain. And I really would love to know more about it. And then you mentioned Engard. And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that kind of oil that you can use as a 360, meaning that you can even wash your floor with that because it's antimicrobial, antiviral, anti-everything?
If you come to my house, you will be hit in the face with On Guard. I use it as a washing detergent. I use it, yes, to clean every surface and floor. Sometimes I even just put a few drops into the toilet when I flush the toilet. It's just as you said, it's an antibacterial and antimicrobial, can you say that again? Microbial, yes. That naturally disinfects things, but it doesn't have that really synthetic, nasty chemically smell that bleach and other cleaners that we get from the supermarket will often have. So your home feels warm. Like I feel like I'm creating a loving home when I use those products. As part of the cleaning. I'll often, once I've got a basket of laundry, I'll throw, sometimes there's a blend called Purify that I really love, or just some lemon oil, grapefruit oil, peppermint, depending on the season, depending what I'm feeling, into the basket of clothing, so that as they're folded, there's just that gentle fragrance. And again, like you put on that piece of clothing 3 days later, you put on that underwear a week later, and it's like a little love note back to yourself that you were being thought of. Your earlier self was thinking of you and taking action to support you back.
Fantastic. And I've also noticed that some of the oils works very well against mold. So instead of using bleach or those very aggressive type of soaps, you can use, for example, clover oil with some bicarb soda just to clean the shower or even the wardrobe. So it looks like the both of us are big advocate of essential oils, the pure essential oils. Jacqueline, I know that we have been talking for half an hour, but I also feel that we have just scratched the surface, and we have just touched upon essential oils. We haven't really talked about different complementary therapies in order to support someone's recovery. So how would you feel about doing a part 2 next month, where we go a little bit deeper in more essential oils and also different type of self-care tools that someone can really use when they're having a challenging time?
I would adore that. And maybe anyone listening today that has any questions or anything specifically you want to know about essential oils for your situation right now, please send them through and we can respond in that space and talk about other complementary therapies which go hand in hand with essential oil use.
Actually, let me ask you a question. Do you have anything that you could share in regards to the essential oils that you use, or do you have a place on your website or on your clinical practice where the women could go to if they would show interest in using them?
Absolutely. I'm most active on Instagram. I'm wings_and_quill, where I do post about how I enjoy essential oils, share ideas, how I use them in cooking, how I use them really in every facet of life with my children. It brings so much richness to how I live, and I love to share over in that space. And also just to my email, Jacqueline@wingsandquill.com, and then we can collect any questions and come back into this space to explore them more.
And just because I'm a very curious person, what's the best oil or the one that you use when you're feeling a little bit lethargic and tired and you're low in motivation?
I love the citrus oils, and particularly for me, there's a beautiful wild orange that doTERRA does. It's actually one of their least expensive oils. It's really accessible, but it's invigorating while being calming. And I also love tangerine, and there's one called green mandarin, which is just gorgeous. It's quite it's almost tart in its aroma, and I find that quite zesty and invigorating. I love the green mandarin, and there's a few citrus blends. I'd also use for feeling fatigue, and something I often use in the afternoon, other mints, so peppermint and spearmint, and there's a blend called supermint that's gorgeous. But I love to drop it on my hands, rub my hands together, put my hands over my mouth and nose, and just inhale as like a little mini inhalation treatment, and that can completely change my mood and energy levels so quickly.
Yeah, and I just wanted to show you, I don't know if I can unplug it or not right now. No, I cannot unplug it, I'm sorry. I just wanted to show you my beautiful humidifier with the peppermint oil, and which is something that I normally have in my studio after 2 p.m. every single day, because as we are both mom of young kids, so normally we wake up between 4 and 5 in the morning. So when it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we definitely need all the peppermint oil and citrus oil that we can get. But thank you so much for sharing this gold nugget. I honestly have to stop because I already have at least another 10 questions in my head. So I'm going to pop your link below. So if women are interested to find out more before we talk again next month, they can definitely reach out and and ask you a question and see if they can actually get some of the essential oils sooner rather than later. And you touched upon the price before, and I know that sometimes that if you look at them in isolation, they can be expensive. But I have to say that I had that kind of mentality that buying essential oils wasn't worth it. It was too expensive. I could save the money and put them towards something else. But first of all, they last for a very long time. Secondly, they can change the mood. They can change my mood for days, if not even weeks, sometimes when I use them. And thirdly, they make me feel worthy and expensive, because there is nothing better than to smell good and to smell something that you love and that you want to smell of.
I couldn't agree more, Claudia. Yes, and with a very high quality oil, you don't need to use much. And some are the lower end of the range. The lemon oil and wild orange are about $14 a bottle, and then they go up most probably on average between $30 to $40 a bottle. And then there's some very basically the more energy it takes to create the oil, like if you're looking at a rose oil or a blue tansy that is really concentrated, the prices can be upwards from there. But you can start with some of those basic citrus, herb oils. Basil oil is not expensive at all, around the $20 mark, and begin your collection, and then you can blend them yourself. But you only need a couple of drops, or one drop will go a long way because they are so concentrated.
Yeah, and I remember that a few years ago, I started with, peppermint oil first, and then it was Engard, because that's something that I can use for my digestive issues. And at the same time, I could clean the house with. I didn't feel guilty about having my little kids running around the house because it wasn't toxic. And it was a product that I could trust. And as you know, I'm very environmental friendly. So it's definitely an oil that, from my perspective, everyone should have in their household. But anyway, that's definitely my point of view. And thank you, Jacqueline, for sharing all this incredible wisdom with us today. We're going to have you next month. And for all the women that are interested, I'm going to pop all the links below. And thank you again for being here today.
Thank you, Claudia.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.